An honest explanation of the Somali Civil War. For nearly 30 years of conflict, the ongoing Somali war has claimed more than 500,000 lives. It all started with the fall of Siad Barre's regime, when military junta led by Barre went out of opposition during the 1980s. The long-term effects have contributed to a series of famines and food shortages throughout the years. Not only is food in short supply, but the cost of a jug of water has increased by more than threefold, costing some households nearly half a day's income. Unlike many African populations, the vast majority of Somalis belong to a single, ethnically homogeneous ethnic group, which means Somalis are all Muslims who speak the same language and have the same culture. Unfortunately, this country has been ravaged by one of Africa's worst civil wars for more than 2 decades. Since the overthrow of the late dictator general Mohamed Siad Barre in 1991, Somalia has been without functioning central government. Competition for resources and power, repression by the military regime, and colonial heritage are some of the factors that have been considered for driving civil war. But in the case of Somalia, the situation has been aggravated by politicized clan identification, the availability of weapons, and the presence of a significant number of unemployed youths. Hello viewers, and welcome to another episode on the channel. In this video, we shall be sharing with you an honest explanation of the Somali Civil War, starting from its causes to its long-term effects on Somalia. Before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, ensure to subscribe, like, and share with a friend. Without further ado, let's get into it. Brief Somali background. Somalis were once thought to be a hybrid race of Arab and African origins, but more recent research implies that they are linked to other ethnic groups in the Horn of Africa. To put it another way, Somalis are Africans by race and Muslims by faith. Somalis did not have a central state in the sense of a Western, barbarian bureaucratic state prior to European colonial intervention. They did, however, use traditional law, known as Heer, and Islam-based conflict resolution processes to settle disagreements between individuals and groups. The Separation of Somalia. Few centuries ago, Somalia was divided into 5 divisions by colonial powers. The United Kingdom grabbed 2 portions, while France, Italy, and Ethiopia split the remaining 3. Somalis fought back against the split, which led to a colonization. Said Mohammed Abdul Hassan led a long war against the British, while in the other parts of Somalia, other groups fought France, Italy, and Ethiopia. Aside from Said Mohammed Abdul Hassan's long-running battle from 1899 to 1921, the Somali Youth League (SYL), founded in 1943, was the most influential organization in the fight for colonization. Following Italy's loss in World War II, the United Nations placed southern Somalia under 10-year international control. Northern and Southern Somalia gained independence on June 26, 1960 and July 1, 1960, respectively, and were merged into one state on July 1, 1960. The goal of Somalia's first state was to combine all the country's provinces under the banner of Greater Somalia. Somalia was a democratic state for the first 9 years after its independence, from 1960 to 1969. In the 1967 election, there were as many as 60 political parties, even though the Somali Youth League was the most popular. However, Somalia was affected by Cold War politics, as well as the winds of change in Africa, and Somalia became a socialist state after a military takeover on October 21, 1969, led by Siad Barre. Despite the fact that Barre's military administration built several schools and roads, the Somali people were oppressed for more than 20 years. Several clan-based armed groups organized rebellions as a response of the military regime's harsh measures. The fall of Barre's regime. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the Barre administration became increasingly authoritarian and cruel, though mass atrocities did not commence until later. Somalia joined the Ethio-Somalia or Ogaden conflict with Ethiopia in 1977. Following a series of initial victories, the Soviet Union withdrew its support from Somalia in favor of Ethiopia, and Somalia was defeated in the war in 1978. After the military defeat against Ethiopia, discontent with the Siad Barre leadership began to develop. Barre murdered 82 high-ranking military personnel on Ethiopian soil for their opposition to the way the war was managed. With the impression that the Barre administration was falling, a number of clan-based militias developed to seize control of their different areas of the country. The Red Berets, Said Barre's presidential battalion, was responsible for civilian murders in and around Mogadishu. In late 1989, the United Somali Congress (USC) was formed to represent the Hawiye clan in central Somalia. Throughout 1990, the Barre dictatorship carried out acts of vengeance on the civilian population. At the end of 1990, the United Somali Congress launched an attack on Mogadishu, and on 27 January 1991, Barre fled the capital. The beginning of civil war. As Barre fled, the United Somali Congress's external branch named Ali Mahdi Mohammed as president. The USC's internal branch, led by General Mohammed Farah Aidid, challenged this decision, and civil war broke out immediately after Barre's departure, with severe civilian losses as a result of artillery fire being used inside the confines of a densely populated urban area. Both the United Somali Congress and the Somali National Front committed atrocities against civilians in Somalia's Gedo region back in 1992. Amnesty International documented the testimony of survivors who described tactics such as massacres of up to 30 or 40 individuals at a time, cutting off and burning of body parts with acids, and widespread use of rape. In December 1992, joint US and UN forces entered Somalia under the umbrella of the United Nations Task Force, UNITAF. While inter-clan militia violence raged on, more losses were caused as a result of clashes between international forces and Somali militias. In general, the casualty figures for the period of mass crimes in Somalia fail to differentiate clearly between civilian and militant deaths, as well as deaths as a result of crossfire versus intentional killings. Even after Barre fled the nation, fighting between warlords continued to kill a large number of civilians. Africa Watch claimed that the factional violence between Aidid and Ali Mahdi's USC forces killed more than 14,000 people between November 1991 and February 1992, based on Mogadishu hospital records. The lowest amount of death estimate from 1988 to 1993 period would result in a figure of around 50,000 deaths, while the compilation of the higher estimates can reach a figure of roughly 100,000 deaths. Struggle for resources and power. Outside of urban areas, several clans compete for resources such as water, livestock, and grazing pasture. Camel ownership has always been a source of contention among Somali nomads due to their utility in surviving in Somalia's harsh environment. State power, weapons, jobs, and foreign aid all became valuable resources for clans and other groups to contend for. Indeed, during the first wave of the Civil War, which lasted from 1988 to 1992, militias were organized along main clan lines and key cities were taken over. It was typical to hear from the media and Somalis at the time that a particular group had seized a specific city or was occupying an important location within the capital. Militias from the Hawiye clans drove other Somali clans out of Mogadishu and other cities in the center and southern areas. Peace attempts. 5 important conferences were supported by the worldwide community. However, at least 12 further conferences were organized outside of Somalia, all of which were unsuccessful. In August 1991, Djibouti hosted the first peace conference, and in 2000, it sponsored the Arta peace process. The failure of the first 2 peace conferences in Djibouti and Addis Ababa was due to a number of reasons. Some of the clan leaders who attended the talks believed that military success would be enough to win the conflict, and hence were not interested in a negotiated settlement. The 6 organizations meeting in Djibouti, for example, reached a peace agreement, but General Mohammed Farah Aidid rejected it, despite the fact that his delegates had signed it. He considered that the agreement did not accurately reflect the situation on the ground. Following the agreement, a power struggle erupted between General Aidid and Ali Mahdi's forces. Recently, Somalia's federal government won international recognition for its planned economic reforms, including its National Development Plan. But it made little progress on security and judicial reforms, while citizens were subjected to conflict-related atrocities, instability, and the humanitarian crisis. International aid focused on strengthening Somalia's security sector and mending relations between federal and state authorities, especially the electoral process. The European Parliament called on the European Union Training Mission in Somalia in September to improve human rights monitoring and management of the Somali government forces it trains. That brings us to the end of this video, and without doubt, we know there's a lot more about the Somali Civil War. You can drop your thoughts and findings in the comment section below in relation to the cause or effect of the ongoing crisis. If you found this content interesting, give us a thumbs up and please do well to subscribe. Thanks for watching.